On the Caribbean island Barbados lies one of the strangest cases of unexplained, potentially paranormal activity that has ever been reported. In the southern coastal area of Oistons, Barbados, is a cemetery known as Christ Church Parish Church. Within the burial grounds are several vaults and tombs that hold numerous dead patrons, including many that died hundreds of years ago. But there's a reason we're discussing this graveyard in particular, and that's because of the incredibly strange case of the Chase Vault that lies within its grounds. The Chase Vault is constructed of coral and carved stone and was built in 1724, when it was purposed to hold a solitary patron known as James Elliot. As it turns out, Mr. Elliot would never end up being entombed there, though records from the day don't specify exactly why that turned out to be the case. Regardless, the Chase Vault then sat empty for over 80 long years. Eventually, however, the vault would regain purpose when Miss Thomasina Goddard was laid to rest in a wooden coffin within its walls. Within a year, the tomb was purchased by Colonel Thompson Chase, a reportedly strict and cruel slave owner with a terrible temperament. Mr. Chase bought the tomb to bury his 2-year-old daughter, Mary Ann Marie, who died of unrecorded causes. Noticing the vault already held a single occupant, Chase decided to leave the body of Miss Goddard so he would not disturb her rest. Little Mary Ann Maria was placed gently next to Goddard in a small tin coffin. After all was said and done, the tomb was sealed with an enormous slab of marble. The marble slab was said to be so heavy that it took 6 to 7 able-bodied men to open the vault. It was a surefire measure to prevent potential grave robbers or anyone who would seek to disturb the peace of those inside. 4 years later, in 1812, the vault was set to receive its third occupant, Colonel Chase's other daughter, 12-year-old Dorcas, who died as a result of her father's abuse. Chase was not only brutal towards his slaves, but also his own family. The resulting abuse caused young Dorcas to spiral into a deep depression, which led her to starve herself to death. Her body was laid to rest in a heavy lead casket which it took several people to carry into the vault. Although everything appeared normal inside the tomb, this is where things took a turn. Only 1 month after burying a daughter for the second time, Colonel Thomas Chase had committed suicide. Perhaps his ties to the death of his own daughter were too much for him to bear, and his guilty conscience got the better of him. His body was also placed in a hefty lead coffin, and he was brought to the vault that he had purchased only a few years prior. The group of people who oversaw his burial were in for a harsh surprise. When the massive marble slab was moved from the entrance, the scene inside the tomb was shocking. The 3 coffins within were greatly disturbed, appearing to have been violently thrown about. The caskets were said to have been in a confused state, having been apparently tossed from their places. The coffins of Mary Ann Marie and Dorcas Chase were heaved against the far wall, with Dorcas' coffin being inverted upside down. Miss Goddard's coffin was also disturbed, but it still rested on the ground. When authorities were contacted, the resulting investigation attributed the act to vandalism, despite the fact that it would have been a monumental task for anyone to unveil the tomb within the massive slab blocking the entrance. Regardless of what actually happened, those already inside were moved back to their proper positions, and the body of Colonel Chase was added to the group. With all the coffins now laid neatly into a row once more, the vault was resealed, and the Chase family hoped that those inside could once again find peace. 4 years passed before the next chapter in the vault story, but in 1816, Chase family relative Charles Brewster Ames died at the young age of 11. Charles was set to be entombed in the Chase family vault, but upon opening the entrance once more, there was a familiar scene. All 4 of the coffins inside had been strewn about, including Colonel Thomas's remarkably heavy solid lead casket. This all occurred with zero signs of forced entry from anyone outside. The coffins were said to have been tossed around like toys, with some even stacked on top of one another. Without any realistic recourse for this second unexplained disturbance, the coffins were simply placed back into their intended positions. Little Charles Ames was added to the inhabitants inside, and the vault was resealed with the massive marble slab. Not long after Charles Ames' burial, a woman visiting the graveyard heard awful, frightening sounds echoing from the Chase vault. Her horse became so visibly upset that it began foaming at the mouth and desperately wanted to leave the area. Although unknown whether it's connected to the story or not, only a few days later, several horses in the area went insane and threw themselves into the bay. Only 2 months later, Charles Ames' father, Samuel, was murdered by angry slaves seeking justice for a violent insurrection. Although originally buried elsewhere, he was later exhumed to be buried alongside his son in the Chase vault. When the tomb was unveiled once more, the same scene appeared. The heavy lead coffins were strewn violently. This became even more unusual as the vault was within plain view of passerbys almost constantly. The story of the vault had permeated throughout the island, and many curious onlookers had decided to check out the cemetery for themselves. Despite this, and no apparent signs of forced entry, the coffins laid amiss once more. The Chase vault was the only tomb in the cemetery where this was occurring. The story was so bizarre that the next funeral that took place there was overseen by the governor of Barbados, Lord Combermere. When Thomasina Clark was to be placed inside the tomb in 1819, he arrived with other government officials to satiate his curiosity. Upon opening the tomb, it was, of course, in utter dismay. Coffins had once again been tossed and damaged. Lord Combermere ordered the tomb to be thoroughly inspected, which resulted in the realization that the entire structure was sound and solid. There were no fractures in the walls. There weren't any hidden tunnels to the inside. When Thomasina Clark was buried, a fine white stand was placed throughout the entirety of the tomb, with the intention of catching any footprints of potential grave robbers or other trespassers. The tomb was once again sealed. For 8 months, the vault remained sealed, though locals would report hearing strange noises coming from the tomb. Eventually, Lord Combermere gave into his curiosity and ordered the tomb to be reopened for further inspection. In April 1820, they once again entered the tomb to the most bizarre scene yet. Colonel Thomas Chase's massive lead coffin was upright and blocking the entrance. Once it was moved, it was revealed to be the worst ransacking so far. Coffins were upended, some smashed against the wall so forcefully that they were broken. Despite all of this, there were no imprints on the white sandy floor. It remained completely undisturbed. The governor had seen enough. He ordered that all the bodies in the vault be exhumed and placed into separate grave sites throughout the cemetery. The Chase vault was to remain vacant, which it has ever since. No one was ever able to explain the constant ransacking of the coffins inside. What do you think? Was this a case of paranormal intervention, or was it simply the work of angered slaves reacting to the cruelty of Colonel Thomas Chase? How is it possible that there were no imprints in the sand trap that Lord Combermere had set? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you so much to user Brian Green for suggesting this week's topic. If you have a topic that you would like to see me cover, I'd love to hear about it. I read every comment and I appreciate all of your continued support. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you back here next week with another mystery.